What up, guys? Four-wheeler doctor back again. Today we're working on this 2021 Foreman 500 Rubicon. This is a foot shift, but it's a brand new one. I just did a gear reduction in it. If you want to see that video, I'll leave you a link up here. But now what we're going to do is put a radiator relocate on it. I still got the plastics off of it. You do not have to remove your plastics, at least on this left side. The right side does make it a little easier to drain your coolant out, but I'll cut to an insert of draining the coolant for when I did a reduction. I'll cut to that right after this little video, but I'll show just show which kit we're using. This guy ended up wanting to go with the Red's off-road reduction. Relocate. I think this is the one that lays your radiator back at a little more of an angle than most of the kits, and I don't know why he wanted to go with that or not, but it doesn't really matter. That's what he wanted, so that's what we're going to put on. Yes, it does. This is the bracket for it here. See if I can get the camera up so you can see it. See, it only sticks up, let's say, about 8 inches or so. So it doesn't stick the radiator up at like a 45-degree angle like most of the kits do. Comes with the bracket. Comes with some splices for your radiator hose, drain hose to come off your radiator, some new hose clamps, little dowels, that's to help hold the radiator in there. Pack of instructions, a koozie, some stickers. Add some extra horsepower with those. A couple hoses here to extend your factory hoses, and then a piece of expanded metal to go behind this bracket and protect your radiator. So start off with, what I'm going to do is go ahead and well, we'll pull the instructions out. I about know what I got to do, but we'll at least look at them. We've got to get the Old Radiator Out. I'm pretty sure on these models you can do it without removing the whole front plastics and all that. So we're going to give that a shot. It saves a lot of time if you don't have to take all the plastics off. So just briefly run through these. They're talking about drilling holes in the plastics. And let me see. Yeah, all the holes that you drill in here go in the black part, which is very inexpensive to replace if you do want to put this back to a factory bike. And really, it doesn't tell much about removing the old radiator. It just pretty much just tells how to put the new one on. So that didn't really help you. So hopefully my video will. But start off with, we're going to go ahead and Coolant Drained. I'll cut to the video now. Alright guys, got all the plastic off the thing now. It wasn't too bad. A couple little hidden snaps. You got one push pin here. You can't really see it until you pull the center plastics off. And then there's a push pin up under here, kind of up by the fuel tank, and then one down here on the bottom. Those are both the same on both sides, so make sure you get those off as well. Alright, so I got the oil draining out, as you can see down there. Next thing we're going to do is drain the coolant out of this thing. So we got to pull this front cover off, and the water pump runs through here, so it'll make a mess if you don't do that. Well, this one is very clean, so you can actually see the copper washer on this bottom 10mm bolt. That's your drain bolt. This usually makes a mess, but the best way I've found to get this out is take this little one of these little bendy funnels. Let me grab one real quick to show you. A funnel like this. You can just pick these up at Walmart and stretch out, and get you a jug. I'm gonna reuse this stuff, and like I said, it ain't got but 100 hours on it. I'm gonna get my other funnel, because this is the one I actually use for oil. But put it on here like this, because this antifreeze, will come out of here like a spigot. So you need something to catch it and then something to drain it into. So I usually get like a just a block of wood to sit the gallon antifreeze jug on, and then break this thing open, and it'll leak out a little bit, and most of the times it'll kind of vapor lock. So then what you have to do is reach up to the top and crack your radiator cap, and that will open up the floodgates and be ready to catch it then. It may drop a few drops in the floor, or it might drop a half gallon if you're not good. But this is the easiest way I've found to do it. Otherwise, there's not a real good way to get it out of there. So drain that coolant out, and then we'll start taking some bolts off of this thing to see if we can get it apart. Alright, got the coolant drained, I hope. Hopefully it didn't wind up like it does most of the time with me and drain all over the floor. So we're going to start pulling this plastic off of this left side first. First thing to go will be your coolant reservoir, 10mm bolt there, a little push pin there, another push pin right below it, and a push pin up here at the top. You can wiggle this thing. Actually, there's a push pin at the very top, at the neck of that the coolant reservoir. You can wiggle this thing around. Probably just pull that top hose off up there that goes to the radiator neck, and that way your coolant won't drain out of here. So I'll hang on to that because we're going to probably need that later. And I'll go ahead and get this side piece pulled off, and probably going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'll go ahead and get it off, show you what to take loose on the other side, and cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, we're going to pull this side plastic off here. There was a push pin here, one at the top here. Then you have to squeeze these little two little ears together here, and there's a tab right here that holds it. So you slide all that forward. This has got a vent line here. It's attached to the back side for the differential. Just unsnaps. There you go. Get your side cover off. Then you can see what you got here. This little baffle thing here in front of it. We're going to go over onto the other side and go ahead and get the plastic off that side. That side's a little bit different than this side. So I'll show you what you got to remove on that side, and then we'll pull the radiator out. Alright guys, on this side there's actually a computer box mounted right here to the side of this plastic. We're going to have to get that out of the way. I'm sorry, somebody's blowing me up on the phone. Goodness gracious. Okay, so we got a push pin down here on the bottom, push pin up on top, 10mm bolt here. We'll take it off too, and I think that may be it. We'll see what we got. Actually, no, there's one more 10mm down here on the bottom. Pull both tins off, both push pins, and we'll see if we can get it off. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, I got the there's one push pin up here in the very top right corner that I can't get out, at least with my hands. So it's keeping the cover here from coming all the way off. I'm gonna go ahead and pull these other two push pins off the side here behind it, and I think that'll allow the whole thing to come off. So that's what I'm gonna try now, and that'll at least get the computer and all that away, and then I can pull that push pin out. Alright guys, got the that other push pin out, and it did work just like I thought. It swings around here now to where we can get access to this other push pin. This is the one I couldn't get a hold of. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off. We're probably going to end up sticking this covers back on there, just as a way to hold the computer back in there. So it comes off just like that. There's our cover, just like the other side. And then we've got our computer back behind here. I'm going to go ahead and slide it off the grommets just so I can get it out of the way. There you go. And now that gets to our radiator. You can pull this front cover off, or front baffle, I guess you want to call that, out of there. So that exposes the whole radiator. To get it out, they're not held in there real good. We're going to pull this coolant line off. We may end up reusing that. And then the plug here for the fan, unplug it. And then there's a 10mm bolt. You can barely see it shining back in here. One here, and then one on the other side in the exact same location. Pull both of those loose, and then your radiator will slide forward, and you can lift up on it and it'll come out. Have to remove the lower radiator hose here on the right side, as well as the upper hose on the left side, and that's pretty much it. I did pull the overflow hose off that goes to the crankcase, or the coolant reservoir, so that's not hooked up anymore. Make sure you pull that off of yours. Alright, let me get all this stuff loosened up and I'll cut the camera back on right before I slide it out. Alright guys, got everything loosened up now. The radiator hoses were kind of stuck on here. You'd have to take a pair of pliers and clamp around them and twist it a little bit to get them to break loose. It's almost like they put some type of glue on there to hold them. So everything's loose. You can just take your radiator and lift up on it like this. There's two little rubber grommets in the bottom, and then slide it right out. Lost a little bit of coolant there coming out that other side. Try to keep it kind of tilted forward so any remaining coolant won't pour out on the ground. But there you go, radiator's out. Now we're going to work on getting this thing put back together and put this relocation kit together. I'll cut the camera back on in a second when I get everything laid out on the car. Alright guys, first thing to do on this Reds kit is to bolt this expanded metal in here. It's just Allen head screws with a lock nut on the back. We'll go through and tighten all those up. I went ahead and stuck them in and hand tighten them. So I'm going to get all those tightened up, and then we'll jump around to the back side and stick the radiator on. Alright guys, got that mesh tightened up. Now I've got the radiator laid in here. On this kit here, some of them may be different, but we're going to have to cut the plastic, a little bit of the plastic off there. You can see where we have a clearance issue on both sides. So we're going to cut those off, but don't get all the way over there to the bolt hole. And also one other thing while I got the camera on here, we also have to pull these rubber grommets out right here that the old radiator sat in. Or well, still the same, the new radiator I guess. It's still the same radiator, but we're going to put these into the new mount. I can't do it with one hand, but just pop those out with a screwdriver and then they'll be stuck back in these holes here, so it will mount up just like factory. So let me cut those plastic pieces off and get these grommets out. I'll cut the camera back on once I get it in. Alright guys, the instructions aren't the best in the world on this little kit here, but I've got the plastic shroud cut off, so this will fit down in the bracket now. It calls for putting a bolt through the front of this long bolt with a spacer onto here. You have to remove the little factory clips that these original fan bolts bolted through. You have to remove those in order to get this bolt to go through here, and it doesn't really cover that in the instructions, so this is how you do it. Alright, so we're going to just sit this up on the side for right now so I can stick these two long bolts and these two washers through the radiator holder here. Those bolts look super long. Well, I guess they'll work. So stick that on there like that. Stick the other one in here like this. Might need to back my camera up a little bit here so you can see what's going on. Alright, spacer on here. And then we can stick a radiator in here with our two pins through the bottom. Get that lined up, it slides right down. Push on your bolt to get it straightened up. Goes through the radiator, goes through the bracket. Just like that. Actually our looks like our mounts here on our, see where those tabs stick off, it's going to hit the hit those bolts. So I'm going to have to bend those tabs over in order to get it to sit down in there deep enough. So let me do that, and let's say the instructions don't cover any of that. So let me get those bent over a little bit, and then I'll cut the camera back on and show you what it looks like. Alright guys, so what I did was bent these tabs over. It's very easy to bend. I just took an adjustable wrench and bent down on them all the way, all four of them. Slide it back in your rubber grommets on the bottom there. Stand it back up. And now you got to get your bolts lined up. The long bolt lined up through the factory hole. Like that. Get your fan bracket lined up here as well. just like that, and then do the same on the other side. This is kind of bound in here a little bit. There we go. Get a bolt hole lined up, bracket lined up, and you can see they clear now. They actually are right there at the at those bolts, but it works. So now you need a washer and a nut. Not sure where my other washer went to, but you put your washer in here first, another lock nut on here, and go ahead and tighten those down. I got to find my other washer because I don't see it, but we'll get both of those tightened down. Then I'll cut the camera back on in just a second and show you what the radiator looks like on the bike, and we'll see about getting our bolt holes lined up that we need to drill in the rack. Alright guys, this is what it's going to look like on the bike. I did have to remove the little storage compartment door, and I pulled the little rubber grommet out of it, so if it does get water in it, it can drain out. This kit was obviously made for the older model bikes, but this is the 2021, so it's a little bit different with that storage compartment and all that. It's still going to have to be trimmed out just a little bit because the bracket is not sitting all the way down, and it's hitting, the fan shroud is hitting right at that bracket. So I'm going to take a look at it and see if we can possibly trim the fan bracket or trim this piece. We're already going to cut some holes in here anyway for the Radiator Relocate, and these pieces are fairly, or for the hoses to come through, these pieces are fairly inexpensive when you do replace it, as opposed to replacing the fender. So let me figure out what I'm going to trim out on there, and I will go ahead and mark our bolt holes on here. This thing was, like I said, set up for a couple different models, so we're going to see which holes line up the best and where we're going to mount it. I'd really like to have it mounted a little farther forward, but that may require a little more trimming. If I could set it back about right there, it actually sits in there flush, and I could use these closer bolt holes, bolt it through the rack, and be done with it. So I may end up going that route, and not even having to trim anything out down there. So that's probably what I'll end up doing. Alright, let me get these things marked up with some center punches, and we'll get the holes drilled in here and get ready to bolt this thing down. Alright guys, so here's our holes we drilled in here. Got one here, one here, one here, and one here. And I had to notch this front piece of plastic out here for the radiator bracket to slide down in. And I'm going to try to run the hoses, the top hose and the wire and the overflow back down through this hole. And this hole here actually almost lines up with our bottom radiator hose, so I'm gonna have to make that a little bit bigger, but I think we're pretty much gonna be able to use that for a bottom radiator hose. But let me stick this thing on here, and I'll let you see what it looks like before we get it all bolted up. So if I can get the camera set up right so you can tell. Like I said, this is a low profile mount that I've never seen one of these before, but this is what the owner wants. So alright, get our holes lined up there. Two's in, that one's in, that one's sideways. There we go. So that's all of our bolts down on there. And see, it sits a little lower. I still don't really think you'll be able to use your headlight, which is an issue with this, the top headlight at least. But it sits a little lower, doesn't obstruct the view as much. So that's the way it's going to sit. Next thing I need to do, like I said, is to cut this hole out here. You can see down in there that it almost lines up perfect with the where the hose needs to go. And then I'll cut the camera back on when I plumb up or splice onto these other hoses down here. So let me get this hole cut up top. I'll probably go ahead and run the hoses down and bolt this thing on, and then I will cut the camera back on right before I splice the hoses together. Alright guys, got everything mounted up now. The the bottom radiator hose, I did run it through and went ahead and put the clamp on it. You can see it there. And now we're going to get over here and splice this bottom radiator hose back together. Hang on just a sec. Alright, sorry about that. Now we need to splice these hoses together. This bottom hose, I'm going to pull it up a little bit about here, and so we got a little extra. I'm going to probably cut a couple inches off, and then we will stick one of these splices in here, and I'm going to use the clamps that are supplied in the kit to clamp this thing together. Put a clamp on each side, and then that'll be it for the bottom hose. Then I'll jump over to the other side to do the top hose. Still got to figure out something to do with this computer. I got to thinking about it. The plastic side pieces are held on with the radiator, with the side there, so they're not going to be really much to hold them on, hold it to the frame if I put these back on. So I'm going to probably end up having to just mount this thing up to the frame in the front between those two frame pieces. Probably just, it's got a rubber bushing like on it, or grommet like, not grommet, bracket almost on it. So I'll probably just use that, twist this thing around about like this, and zip tie this to the frame. That should isolate it from the frame for any vibration. It always getting soaked with water where it was at anyway. So that's what I'm going to do with it. There again, none of this is covered in the instructions. So, also one other thing, this radiator fan, the way the fan wires are run on this one, you actually don't even have to splice it. There's the wire coming from the fan right there, and then here's the wire that it connects to, so you can just connect those right up. And I went ahead and pulled the coolant overflow line, or I'm sorry, not coolant overflow, the fan vent line off. I'm going to stick it back up there on the fan. I pulled it off of the bike here. So let me get this hose hooked up. I'm going to go ahead and mount that computer, and then we'll jump to the other side and do the top hose. Alright guys, over here on the left side now, I cut a little bit more of the hose off than I did on the other side, probably 6 inches or so. What I'm going to plan on doing with this one is, this hose has got a pretty hard bend in it. I'm going to twist it and make it come in just like this to tie into that splice, so it doesn't have so much stress on it. So that's what we're going to do. I'll stick the splice in there, tie it back together, and then the next thing we'll do is, I guess, get ready to put some coolant in this thing. I am going to show you how I'm going to route the fan vent hose up there, but that'll be about it. Alright, cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, I'm going to dump this coolant vent, or fan vent line, back down through the hole here, stick it back up through the frame where it was. The other thing about this, some of these kits will just do away with the overflow. This one actually called to put it back on there. It came with a piece of hose to use. I've got a piece of clear hose here, run down here, and I'm going to mount it at the same location it was before. Stick it back through this hole up here with a push pin, and just zip tie the bottom end of it down to the frame, and I think it should be fine there. That way you can fill it up from the top just like you were before. Kind of gets it out of the way too. Like I said, some kits call for this to be put back on and some of them don't, so I'm going to cut this hose a little shorter, put a couple push pins and zip ties in here, and fill this thing up with coolant. Guys, I believe that's about it for this little thing. What I like to do on these two is fill them up with coolant, let it run until either your coolant light cuts on or your fan cuts on. If your fan cuts on, I let it run through a cycle to where the fan cuts back off, switch it off, let it cool down, take the cap off, and make sure it's full. What I do a lot of times, and I don't know if this is the correct way to do it or not, but I'll let it run for a while without the cap on, and when the thermostat opens up, you can see the coolant level drop down very quick, and you actually start seeing it circulating through the radiator. When that happens, I usually top it off, and then I put the cap on, let it run till it runs, the fan cuts on it, and then switch it back off, let it cool down, and then fill it back up with coolant, or top it back off with coolant. Just do that a couple times. That's usually all it needs to get all your coolant back in here. Alright guys, well I appreciate you checking out my video. I actually got another one of these coming in probably next week. 2021 model with another Relocate. Probably going to be a little different design than this. The owner already has it. I actually don't even know what it is, but it's the first one I've ever seen like this, so I doubt it's going to be like this one. But thanks for checking my video out. Hit the like button, subscribe, and keep keep on the lookout for some more videos.